Welcome to the first ever Fighters Crossing Tournament series. Fighters Crossing is a monthly sponsored tournament hosted to showcase the skills of passionate card fighters from all around the world. So if you are up to the challenge, check out the Card Fight Club Discord and sign up for our next tournament. Links in the description box down below. Today, 16 fighters will duke it out and only one champion will walk away with 10 booster packs, so bless your poos. So let's check out our contestants. This tournament's format is best out of one. Each fighter will be given 15 minutes to complete their match. If both fighters are unable to produce results in 15 minutes, both fighters will be declared lost. In the first bracket, we have NCCB representing CDG Ronin up against Acolyte. At bracket 2, we have our favorite OTT user Misakyu showing promising results on the club tournament, going up against X-Spectronic. Bracket 3 is hot with Overloader going up against Sunf, who was the previous champion of the club tournament with His Majesty Lord Blaster. And on bracket 4, we have Kawa facing off against Humble Ninja TV, two new faces on a tournament series. On bracket 5 features PromiseX and ToadSage 99. PromiseX has given us an excellent show during his previous tournament debut, so I expect a good show out of him. On the 6th row, we have Epic 9330 versus Axia with his favorite clan, Spike Brothers. Now that Wing of Brave is gone, note this is after the update, Spike Brothers is one of the strongest deck right now, so Spike Brothers fans rise up. Now on bracket 7, we have Sheena up against Tia-chan, Moderator versus Imperial Daughter. This is gonna be interesting. And on the final bracket, we have Miguel facing off Akuma Sandesu. So without further ado, let's have an awesome card fight. With round 1 underway, we have ToadSage 99 up against PromiseX. So ToadSage wielding the tournament champion won't be an easy opponent for PromiseX since he has a lot of experience with the Vanguard tournament system. PromiseX is using Kagero Overlord. ToadSage seems to be using Overlord as well since with his profile icon, so we will never know what will happen. I am extremely hyped to see these fighters right now because especially with the MLB nerf right now, there isn't much MLBs in the tournament, which is a really good fresh change of face. It is gonna be Kagero versus Spike Brothers, extremely unexpected right now. So we have ToadSage carrying Spike Brothers is one of the top meta decks right now, and with PromiseX and his Dragonic Overlords, he does play critical triggers, which is very interesting because most Overlord decks do play for full draw triggers, but the crit actually does come in handy. And PromiseX started off with the interesting and a line of emotes. So he does write that PG, unfortunate because PG is really important for Spike Brothers, but Spike Brothers don't really have a problem because they have the Mecha Trainer, which is able to fetch a PG, excellent against any Paladins. PromiseX does drawing into his drag. Oh, it is not a Dragonic Overlord EX the end, but it does look like Dragonic Overlord in the end. It is his heal trigger, which is the Blazing Flare Dragon, but he does draw into extra PG as well, which is very interesting as what Kai says. So he taunts the opponent with "Show me what you got." So that's first part of damage, and what will it be? Will it be a trigger? It won't be a trigger. It is the high speed Rocky into the damage zone. So it is up to the Spike Brothers player, which is ToadSage. I'm really hyped to see what the Spike Brothers bring on the table. I've heard a lot of great things about this deck, and honestly it's such a new clan that I don't really have a lot of experience with it myself. But personally, I've been playing it around and I know how strong the deck is. He does check the draw trigger very good. It is a Juggernaut Maximum draw trigger. Right now, Jelly Beans is the heal trigger of choice, replacing Juggernaut Maximum. So if first points of damage goes in, it isn't a draw trigger, but it comes back with a heal trigger. Amazing. So this to note means PromiseX does play a mixture of heal triggers, which is the Blazing Flare and the Dragonic Duo X. So now we are going into PromiseX's turn. He does draw into Striken, a really good combo piece. It's his choice whether to write Striken to delay 1 pound of damage. It's actually pretty good against Limit Break decks because you don't want to do them to 4 damage immediately. And also he does have Velocity Dragon to counter charge, but he chooses not to use it, which is not really a problem because there isn't much retiring power with Spike Brothers, so it is, and he does have a lot of PGs in his hand. So what I think he could actually just fetch out the Armo if he needed, but it doesn't really matter at this point. Perhaps he would have mattered because he would have counter charged with the Velocity as well. So he writes in Dudley Emperor. Really unfortunate. Riser Clone. The Riser Clone actually calls out PG is one of the worst situation. I know that feeling. But he does swing in 1 pound of damage, and he will be able to swing in 2 pound of damage, 16k boosted by the 6k booster, which is really good. So unless he checks the defense trigger, he does check a defensive trigger. Oh my goodness, this is a huge counter. This way your opponent will be missing out on one extra attack, which is huge, and the opponent just passes his turn. Right now it is the Dragonic Overlord turn to make a comeback. So this time round will be huge because he does draw into Dragonic Overlord the end, making him very satisfied with his hand. His hand is actually excellent right now, other than the fact that he's drawing one extra heal. He does have the option to go with Dragonic Overlord the end, but he does not have any. He does use the Dragonic Overlord the end. Really interesting because he does not have Personal Blast pieces, but yet he want to rush for it. If he does have the Personal Blast pieces, it is actually a very devastating play because he will be able to re-stand the Dragonic Overlord the end with an extra critical fix with Striken's ability. So he does call in the Joker, which allows him to gain power whenever he does retire rearguards. He caught a slew of Great Trees right now. So taunting with Show Me What You Got, he does take out the Black Panther. Surprisingly, he hasn't used the conroll, but not really necessary. Because he does think that he have enough PGs to survive. So that's one point of damage going in, or perhaps 2 points of damage. And if he would set a draw trigger, it would mean he had the time to draw a second Dragonic Overlord the end copy. Checking his Personal Blast. Wow, a heal trigger to save him. That is amazing. Basically mitigating the critical damage. That is crazy. A very good back and forth play between both players right now. Both players both at 3 hand size, but 4 to the Spike Brother player, and both having the same amount of damage. But Overlord does have a bit of advantage right now since he has a bigger field, but Dudley Emperor is able to build field very quickly. However, he is not at 4 damage, which is the problem of Limit Break decks. Limit Break is basically just abilities to limit your plays. So the first guy to use Conroll gets its Perfect Guard. It is basically Mega Trainer, which is the Conroll of Spike Brothers. Both of these decks have one of the best consistent engines to get out the PGs. So Dudley Emperor attacks, and it's an extremely clutch heal trigger. It's insane. Heal trigger goes into the Dudley Douglas. Dudley Douglas will be able to hit regardless each other. You check a trigger, which is good. So the unfortunate thing is that PromiseX doesn't really have an intercept right now, and it's taking a barrage of damage. The damage differences is very big in this turn because of the heal trigger. So right now it is Promise's turn to make a comeback. And oh, that feeling where you thought you draw the Dragonic Overlord at the end because of the artwork is way too similar. Look at the sword positioning of both the flares and the Dragonic Overlord at the end. It looks so similar. And so now he does go into battle phase. His only way to come back is he has to check a Dragonic Overlord to hand to gain some pluses with the Persona Blast. So no trigger check. So will PromiseX make a huge comeback with this ability? He does check a draw trigger. Whoa, he doesn't draw into the Persona Blast pieces, but he still get a draw trigger, which is pretty good as well. So he does get a draw trigger with this Juggernaut Maximum. Extremely powerful play right there. But he is not at 4 damage. Perhaps it was Promise's plan to not bring him to 4 because during the 4th damage, Spike Brothers are extremely deadly because they will be able to unleash a huge ton of attacks. For example, with cards like Braki, which allows itself to return so that it can use Emperor's ability to call out more units. So unfortunately, it's another huge trigger, but with Wisp, so it's actually good and bad for Promise since the Braki will be able to hit whether if you check a trick. It doesn't really matter because Braki can also Soul Blast to add power. But of course that PG blocks that final kills. And let's go on to Prometheus' turn. Prometheus looking at quite the pinch right now with no intercepts at all, which is quite bad. He does draw a slew of great ones, with one of them being a specific Overlord booster. So putting it behind the Overlord is not bad because he has Soul Blast to make sure he hit magic numbers. So now he activates the ability of Conroll to add the PG into his hand, very crucial. His hand size is still quite big, but can he make the comeback with such a situation, with a huge damage gap? So he does activate the ability to control the board, giving the Blazing Flare extra 3k and Joker extra 3k, mixing a magic number against Dudley Emperor. He activates the ability to wipe out all the rearguards. Very perfect, clean wipeout right this turn. So this turn is probably going to use Overlord to wipe out every single rearguard and hope that Spike Brothers won't be able to make a comeback with its hand size. Its hand size 4 is actually pretty small. So right now it's very crucial. He gets rid of the intercept. It is a very solid play because right now these are all magic numbers. From what I'm seeing, it's gonna be Blazing Flare into Dragonic Overlord DN, and then the Dragonic Overlord, because the personal booster will be a 10k booster as well, which is huge. He decked a draw trigger. That is not looking too well for too good for Prometheus, but Prometheus is still able to do extreme damage to opponent, so he needs a trigger to check. However, the Dragonic Overlord will still be able to swing with his amazing ability. Soul Blast 1 personal booster for Dragonic Overlord, making it a 26k magic number. So that depletes 1 PG off your opponent's hand, and it's down to Dudley's turn. This turn will be the turn to determine it all. Whoa, he be able to do the Crush Rush combo with no boosters. So the main crucial point here is he must have boosters in our pool of, because it is a 11k base. However, some of the Spike Brothers cards are very amazing and they gain extra power by Soul Blasting. So this might actually be a huge trouble for Prometheus. So against 12k, become 12k, swing 1 PG off. How many PG does Prometheus have to survive every single attack? It is really painful. So another Soul Blast. High Speed Braki swings in. Another PG, and finally Dudley Emperor using its Limit Break skill. And with Dudley Emperor's skill, he will be able to do 2 extra points of attacks, including Dudley Emperor, who makes it 3. That is the power of Spike Brothers, one of the top meta picks of this tournament. So he activates Limit Break, send 1 card to this soul, call out 2 units of your choice in the deck. That is insane. It's basically advanced Royal Paladins, and this might be it. So let's see what are some of the choices that ToadSage will be calling with Dudley Emperor. He calls out High Speed Braki and Dudley Dogus. Dudley Dogus skill is when he caught during the battle phase, he can activate Counter Blast 1 to gain plus extra 5k, effectively making it a Braki without the Soul Blast cost and returning back to the deck. So there's no triggers. So whoa, Prometheus check a heal trigger to save his life. He doesn't check the heal trigger, and unfortunately the first game goes to ToadSage, and the first ever winner will be Spike Brothers. Congratulations ToadSage, and Prometheus, don't give up hope because there will always be the next tournament. And that's it for game 1. Let us go on to round 2. We have MLB versus Shadow Paladins, and the game is underway as we see the brand new Majestic Lord Blaster using the Libergao as the starter. X-Spectronic using Royal Paladin up against Acolyte using Shadow Paladins. It was a previously Acolyte was using Majesty Lord Blaster, but with the nerf of MLB, Shadow Paladins might actually has gotten higher tier, and Shadow Paladins is actually a really good deck right now to run because it is actually as strong as Majesty Lord Blasters without having the problem of opponent denying the damage. But right now it's not really a problem. The only problem about MLB now is you gotta draw into Majesty Lord Blaster, and that is actually a huge problem. So he rides into Blaster Blade and swing into the Blaster Javelin. And let's see whether 1 point of damage goes into them. He is a draw trigger, which is huge. Draw trigger gain 1 extra hand size. And previously, I believe Acolyte did check a draw trigger as well, which means he has a huge hand size, which potentially might overflow as well. So we will see him riding the Blaster Duck this turn. So I believe both players are playing the game in the tournament room, so I won't be able to spectate their hands, but it's okay. We'll be able to see, and I'll be able to commentate right here. So he rides the Blaster Duck, giving a very solid 10k base as a defensive option. So he calls the Masquerade, going in for a high swing, making a 20k column really huge. Also right now it's not really a problem of denying opponent damage because with Libergao it isn't really a problem. It's not as consistent. You won't be able to fetch out stuff like the Blaster Duck, so it's very important for Royal Paladins to draw into their Blaster Ducks. So we'll see Masquerade swinging for 20k, despite the draw trigger that check double draw trigger. That is also a huge plus. So not really losing out much from X-Spectronic with the double draw. And very interesting, he does play the draw triggers. This is a great alternative to playing Parameters. If you do not play Parameters, my house is actually still very good. So he does check, does draw 1, he goes to rides into Majesty Lord Blaster without relying on the Libergao. So as you guys can see, Libergao is just there to fetch out your potentially fetch out Blaster Blade against a lot. Blaster Blade goes into the Burst Blaster. Since Majesty Lord Blaster itself does play draw triggers most of the time, you don't really have problems with drawing combo pieces. So, but we will see whether he is able to search out the Blaster. It seems that he does not have Blaster Duck, and he activates Libergao's skill to look at top 5, and he adds a Parameters to hand. So Libera has a good and bad. The good thing is if you draw MLB, if you check the MLB adds it to your hand, you get, oh, he does have the Blaster Duck, which is good. So right now, with the help of Palometer 7k base, you'll be able to solo the Blaster Duck. Another draw trigger by Acolyte, a very powerful trigger checks, which will still go through because Majesty Lord Blaster will become 22k plus 10k and plus 2 extra k with 2 Blaster Blade and Blaster Duck. So let's see what triggers will he check. He has no triggers, so but the opponent won't be able to perfect guard since at 3 point damage. That's another draw trigger, that's crazy! That is so strong. Triple draw triggers is every fighter's nightmare, especially during opponent. So right now we go back to Acolyte and we'll see what he can do with his hand. The bad thing is he does lose 2 copies of Overlord into the damage zone, so he won't be able to potentially personal blast as much as he would like to. So he rides into Phantom Blaster Dragon, allowing him to damn charging lands with the amount of damage. But it might not be worth it because he does only have a Great Tree on the field. So he spawns out the bug. He spawns out the starter, which is the Fubao. I've name slipped out my mind for a second. Use the Scourge Namen to Count plus 1, discard 1 to draw 2, increasing his hand size. My god, like his hand size is not big enough. Check out that hand. It is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hand size. It's just 1 card away from having a full hand. So let's call a Blaster Javelin out. Will he use damn charging lands? This is the choice he might want to make. He actually goes for it, retiring that Palomedes by sacrificing 3 of his comrades. He sacrificed the Nemains and he let the weaker boosters. So right now we'll see a huge play from Acolyte himself with Blaster Duck and Javelin. Blaster Duck is there just for an interceptor. So Javelin swing and potentially allowing him to countercharge 1, a very good play. So he will be able to be at counter plus 2 during next turn in case he cross rides and be able to retire rear guards to swing for game. So now the Vanguard swings, that's it. Wow, he checked a heal trigger, that is crazy. Bringing the damage down to 3 is to 4. And another draw trigger, that is crazy. Oh my god, this guy is champion material with that strength. So even if he PGs, the Blaster Duck is still dealing that 1 extra point of damage. That double trigger is huge in this situation. And right now we'll see Blaster Blade going swing, cutting that life point 1, but it gets a draw trigger, and he's hoping he could draw a perfect guard right now because that's what he really needs during the next turn. And also he needs to check a heal trigger in order to bounce back the game because the amount of triggers, the amount of damage he has is 3 is to 5 is a huge difference. So Majesty Lord Blaster looking to be at the edge here with its 6 hand size and the opponent's 6 hand size and full board. He just sends back some of his Gan slot to potentially check some heals in the late game. He gets out the Blaster Duck. It's goes out Blaster! So he destroys the Curse Lancer and will be able to potentially push in 2 points of damage. He calls out K and Starcore Trumpeter for the extra damage push. So most likely he will be attacking with Majesty Lord Blaster first to bait out that PG, then proceed to use Starcore Trumpeter to swing in. So will he check triggers to... There's no triggers at all. That is very unfortunate, and the opponent's Sentinel does activate, giving him the protection he needs. He's still at Count Blast 2 thanks to the counter charge for Curse Lancer, and now he's 3 unflipped damage. So with that 3 unflipped damage, what can he do? Let's find out the next turn. So this turn is very crucial for the MLB player because he's now at 5 damage and every single retiring counts the death. Basically, he has to perfect guard every single attack. So in this case, we will see 2 potential pushes. So he will need to have at least 2 PGs. Wow, that's another Scourge Domain to fill up his hand size. So he will never ever run out of hand. This is why Shell Fan is so solid. It's one of those decks that has so much strong draw power and it makes the deck so good right now. However, we see he does not ride into Dragonic Overlord, Phantom Blaster Overlord, my bad. And he does not have the cross ride. So that might be the result of him getting most of the PBO into the damage zone, or perhaps he doesn't want to ride it for certain reasons. But I guess the main reason is because he didn't draw it, because otherwise we would ride it for the cross ride anyway, since he's using the double Scourge in the main to draw extra cards. Oh, and maybe not, he decides to go for the hardcore push, retiring with Phantom Blaster Overlord skill. Phantom Blaster Dragon skill. That is crazy. That is a huge push. With that, he might have lethal because I was surprised because he didn't actually ride the Phantom Blaster Overlords to Counter Blast 2 to retire. And I was guessing maybe he did not have it, but maybe he just wanted the extra crit onto his Phantom Blaster Dragon. So now Phantom Blaster Dragon attacks. Does he have the PG to survive this? It is very, very important, and it makes a huge difference. He does have the PG. That is crazy. So that is a huge push by Acolyte, but a miss because of the PG may cost him a lot because that is a -3 in order to swing. But to be fair, Acolyte has a lot of advantage. But right now, it is X-Spectronic's turn to make a comeback with his rear guards. It is pretty rare that MLB have a lot of PGs, and wow, he actually managed to defend against a crazy attack coming for Acolyte. So X-Spectronic is going all out, trying to find his way to push through and destroy all the interceptors, which he might have problem with because he caught the Marin to the front. His hand might be a last PG, if it makes sense, because he's keeping it in the hand. But right now, here's the thing. Does my opponent have a PG? Actually, there's no way he could win because his MLB must attack the side. And that is a problem because he won't be able to make use of the trigger. But in order to attack, he must actually check a trigger. He checks a huge trigger, which is very big in this situation because he will have extra chance to check damage triggers in order to defend incoming attacks. Defensive triggers is the only way he can survive with that one PG in hand. So Acolyte not checking the defensive trigger is very bad. So let's see. Both players are on the edge. Well, how will this end? We will never know right now. So does he have defense? He does not have the PBO for that crossride. Having the PBO for the crossride will make this game so much easier because most of his rear guards won't be able to solo swing, especially the MLB, and it requires a booster to even hit Phantom Blaster Overlord. So what will Acolyte do in this situation? He does have 4 hands to work with. He does ride the Phantom Blaster Overlord. Sorry, I might have misread it. He does call it because it doesn't really matter. He needs to push in as much damage as he can, and he does suspect that the opponent does have a PG in his hand. So it's a huge trigger. Oh my goodness, it is so big. Both players are checking so many heals, and will, even with a defensive trigger, the only way to survive is to have a PG in hand. And with even so, he does have the last PG. That is insane. Oh my god, this MLB did actually manage to draw 4 of his PGs. That is crazy. This might be his chance to win, but he has to draw into a grade 1 in order to even hit the Phantom Blaster Overlord, or he have to depend on his trigger luck to push in. But does Shadow Paladin player have the PG to survive? He does check the Blaster Blade. Exciting. So this is his push for his avatar. Can he ever win this game? It is all down to Blaster Blade. So right now he's gonna push, and he's gonna hope he checks a trigger. Will he check a trigger to push for game? We'll see. It's no trigger, and the attack whiffs. The Shadow Paladin players probably sighing a relief because that might have been game. Oh my goodness. If he were to check a heal trigger, we would have won quite a bit because there's no inbuilt crit in Shadow Paladins, and that's its only weakness, and he has an extra damage to work with. But right now, Shadow Paladins does have the upper hand, and this might be the final turn. We will see where the side quality Aichi gets a drop down. He does call down a Phantom Blaster Dragon, making an 18k column a magic number, and so he will have to swing with PBO to defend to the Blaster Blade instead. And with no PGs, will he check a heal trigger? Will he check a heal trigger? Royal Paladin. Wow, that is a heal trigger by the Shadow Paladin. Overkill much, but whoa, Royal double heal trigger, double with what? That is insane. I am with Aichi right here. Whoa, he checked a heal trigger to survive. No, it is no heal trigger, and it's game. It's pretty unfortunate, but the game was so good. It was really close. As both players did excellent. So congratulations to Acolyte for taking game. It was a very close game, and we will see you on the next round. Next fight, we will have Akuma-san versus ToadSage. ToadSage 99, who has shown a promising result with his Spike Brothers, will be going up against another Kai avatar, which is Narukami, another deck which is one of my most feared decks because it is the Wingo Slayer itself. So let's check out his hand. He does have a very interesting hand, which is the Dungaree hand. I wonder what build he uses, whether it's the Vermilion build or it's the Dungaree build. So from what I see, it's pretty much a Dungaree, but it might be a mixture of the Vermilion and Dungaree. So first up, Spike Brothers right into Dudley Daisy, pulling out the Mecha Trainer to the side. Very interesting matchup because both players might be denying damage of each other because they don't want the starters to get popped. So a really solid hand on Akuma's side because Akuma does have the 1-2-3 without an extra triggers in his hand, so he does ride the Stormy and pull out these cards to this side. Very interesting choice because usually most people do play their starters at the center so that when the Vanguard hits, he will be able to use the ability to retire. So it costs a double Stormy and does do the pass turn, wanting to deny the damage. It also does make sense because Akuma's-san does have two Great Tools in his hand, which is the three Great Tools in his hand, Damage Unflipper and the Intercept Negator, which is really good. So he rides a Black Panther, checks that draw trigger, really huge, to replenishing that hand size, powering out to Dudley Dogus, and Dudley Dogus will be doing that one extra pound of damage regardless whether Kuma does check that extra trigger. So ToadSage does bring Kuma to 2 points of damage, not fearing that Draco Kid, Spark Kid, I remember, Lizard Soldier Saishin. So right now it's Akuma's turn to do in the damage. So it is very unfortunate as Mecha Trainer will have to go, but perhaps ToadSage, the Spike Brother player, will have an extra PG already in his hand. So he does right onto the Desert Gunner to steal off that intercept and call that extra unit, the Unflipper, to do damage, counter charge and destroy. Really good combo. Basically decked with Unflipper is just so powerful right now because damage counter charging is such a huge deal in Vanguard 0. So counter charge destroys, and right now Desert Gunner will gain extra power thanks to its destruction skill. And there we go, the Dragonic Vermilion that I predicted in this deck, which is usually a mix in Narukami nowadays. So he does hit and it ends the turn. So both players at pretty equal advantage right now. Both player does have 5 hand size, 6 for the Spike Brother player and 2 points of damage. So this turn will be the turn he rides into the Dudley Emperor, the strongest Spike Brother unit right now. So both player might want to be careful to give each other their limit break because this is basically the same match as the anime, which Kai does use the Kaiser Vermilion to break the front row, and that's what Spike Brother is really afraid of. So he has to get a draw trigger, replenishing more hand size and powering up to this side. So it's a pretty evenly matched balance between triggers. As you can see, both players triggering and whatnot. A lot of draw triggers flying out. We've not seen any huge triggers so far. And just like that, the Narukami's limit break is online. So what limit break will he be riding? So he does draw another Dungaree. That's pretty unfortunate. He's probably wishing, man, I want to Vermilion so badly. But Dungaree does the job well. Oh, the bind animation is actually different after the update. It used to be sent sideways, but now it's just swirl into darkness. But now we get to see some really cool moves with the Rising Phoenix to draw 1 extra card. Drawing the Stormy, not drawing triggers is always a plus. And there's a lot of plus. There's a huge hand size at the Narukami side, and this will be a huge turn. He will also be able to counter charge using the counter charger. What you call it? The Garuda, which is really huge. So right now, also thanks to Stormy's boosted ability, it will be a magic number. So snipe off that rear guard, and just like that, Spike Brothers is way too open. There's no intercepts at all. And thanks to Dungaree's skill for being so cheap, and the counter charging combo with Garuda, counter blast is ample for Narukami. Just check out that counter charge. And also the amount of retiring just boosts up those Stormies to become 13k base boosters. Those are huge. It all comes down to whether the opponent can check a defensive trigger. It does not check, will it still be able to hit? It is still able to hit with 22k attack power. So get a draw trigger, so that draw trigger is what he really needs to make a huge comeback, because Spike Brothers does use a bit of hand size to do their oppressive combos. So right now it's Spike Brothers' turn to activate his limit break, the avalanche attack. So what will he do? What will be the first two rear guards he call down as an intercept destructor? He could always push up the Reckless Express at the back, push it to the front, and make it 12k to swing off the rear guards. This is what he's gonna do. He calls out the double Reckless Express, classic Spike Brothers move. He calls out the PG, you know he's really serious about his combo. He's gonna make sure every single attack counts. His plan is probably to make the Vanguard hit, and the rest of his rear guards by the limit break skill be able to try to force out as many perfect guards as possible. This is a huge crush rush turn, and it's the terrifying power of Spike Brothers. Spike Brothers is showing so much potential right now as one of the best decks after MLB being dethroned. So now it all comes down to whether Akuma-san, the Narukami player, will be able to check a defensive trigger. Wow, it's double Juggernaut, so even a defensive trigger might not save him from that. So it also depends on whether he can check. He checks a trigger, that is crazy. Now, where does he put his trigger? Will the opponent check a defensive trigger? Very, very important. If he were to put the defensive trigger, the trigger to the bigger side, he will still hit. Oh, it's a defensive trigger. This means the opponent, no attacks is gonna hit. Oh, actually there's two attacks is gonna hit. There's one PG. The double maximum actually put in effort, and that draw trigger actually managed to win his game. So now can Akuma-chan, he does not activate Juggernaut skill. Oh, he have ran out of soul. That is so close. My god, I didn't realize he ran out of soul. Oh, that is bad. ToadSage might not have realized that he ran out of soul. That is the problem. Oh my goodness, that was so close. That was way too close. No way. Akuma-san actually managed to draw a PG. That is crazy. He limit break, snipe off that Juggernaut maximum. At that point, it might be better to call it intercept, but to be fair, there's so much Soul Blast. He might not have countered to the Reckless Express Soul Blastings. Oh my goodness, it's so painful to watch, but it is so close. This game is epic, but all hope is not lost. Because he will still have a chance to defend himself. Well, he doesn't have any PGs, but he have a huge trigger to save him. This game is way too close. Each player is showcasing their limit breaks, and Akuma-san takes the win. Oh my god. So both fighters are roaring and ready to cut fight. Let's have an epic battle, boys. So we have Shadow Paladin Aichi versus Narukami Asia Circuit Kai. So previously Acolyte was using Majesty Lob Blaster, but with the Majesty Lob nerf, he actually went to Shadow Paladin, and it looks like it's a great choice because this Shadow Paladin deck is really solid, as previously seen in the previous game, has a lot of good trigger lineup. Right now we are looking at Kuma's hand, and Kuma does have a really solid hand, having no extra triggers like previous game, and this will actually affect a lot of the game, because having a lot of triggers is a problem for Narukami, since they are not like Ganslot or Jelly Beans. They won't be able to go back to their deck, so it's a really solid play. And first of all, riding that Blaster Javelin over that Fubao, netting in a +1, Acolyte is looking to have a really good game ahead with Blaster Javelin in his hand. So with Blaster Duck ready in his hand, Kuma might be ready because he does play the Dragoon. He does play Vanillas in his deck. So it's now Kuma's turn. What will you ride? Most likely I predict he will ride into the 8k Vanilla, saving the Stormy for those retiring effects since he's playing Dangari. He also has a really solid hand because his top draw 2 isn't a trigger at all. So similar strategy, he'll be calling it to the side. Probably because he does have a lot of great tools to pull off abilities the next turn. He's probably going to call the Garuda to the side to counter charge, similar to the previous game. So a Rising Phoenix check, 1 point of damage. It's a draw trigger, an SP, a very neat looking Phantom Blaster Dragon. That is the same Phantom Blaster Dragon that we saw at the first damage check. Does this boy have Psyqualia? Is what I wonder. So it's now the Shadow Paladin's turn. What will Acolyte draw into? He will probably ride into the Avatar of Determination, Blaster Dark. So Blaster Duck is a solid 10k base, which makes Garuda hard to hit. But fortunately, Kuma does have extra boosters, such as a Stormy, and Garuda is mostly gonna hit. But unfortunately, this is not really good matchup because there's nothing to retire for Sparky Dragoon, or probably, but this might change once the Nemain draws into a booster. So now, Shadow Paladin is kind of immune to Narukami since they don't really have any boosters. Oh, he does call one booster out. He does call two boosters out. Now Kuma is setting his target at lock on to think which unit he want to retire during the next turn. So now it's Acolyte's turn to swinging some damage. First hit. So it's a bit of server lag right there. So 1 point of damage. There's no trigger, which means the attack is swinging in hard. So it doesn't really matter because since it's an 18k magic number, even if you check a trigger, it will still go through. So he does check another Phantom Blaster Dragon trigger, really powerful. So once again, Acolyte has a really healthy hand size, but Akuma does make a comeback with the draw trigger, drawing into another trigger. Unfortunately, a Dangari, but it's okay as long as you draw a heal trigger, you won't hurt that badly. So now it's Akuma's turn to do some really important plays. Now you have to decide whether he wants to retire the 8k or the 7k with an ability. So let's ride the Vanguard. Right on to the grade 2. I am predicting riding onto the 10k base, which is the logical choice. It's always better to ride a 10k base to prevent incoming attacks during your opponent's next turn, especially if they have unboosted units. He calls out another Stormy. He is gonna go for a huge push this turn. He could potentially use a Dragonic Death Side to retire, hit with Garuda, counter charge. This is a huge clue. Oh my god, that 2 point of damage might be a big problem. It will totally obliterate Acolyte's field, leaving him no rearguards during his next turn. Really good play. This is basically Narukami at peak form. It's crazy, man. So he swings with Garuda. It's a heal trigger, very important because this way Acolyte won't be taking an extra damage unless the Dragoon does check an extra trigger. So he does retire the back row Charon, and of course with that ability brings it up to 23k to the Vanguard column and a 22k to the rearguard column. Very big column, and it all comes down to whether Akuma could check a trigger to save his life. So finally the Vanguard, will he check a trigger? He checks a heal trigger. It whiffs, but it boosts attack through. That is 4 points of damage into 2. That is a huge push by Akuma, and it's insane. This game is going really crazy as both opponents are triggering like mad. These are world class fighters, like what Suiko says. So it is time for Acolyte to push to deal in some damage. With PBD, it's usually the turn that he pushes in a lot of damage if he does have Barb card in his hand, especially, and also, of course, if he does have the resources to even do it, because the Narukami did destroy all his resources, his back rows. Narukami is such an amazing clan. So he rides into the Phantom Blaster Dragon. So he's thinking where he wanna position that Fubao. He calls Fubao to the other rearguard. Really good choice because he might be able to boost on the main, is what I think. Usually I boost on the main. So he does have 3 points of damage to work with. What will he do with those 3? As predicted, as on the main, every strong Shadow Paladin will have a damn domain in his hand. I know that feeling. I am using MLB and I always fight people. If they draw Blaster Javelin, chances are they're just gonna go in the main and outdraw you and destroy you. This is extremely powerful, and you can see the main just replenishes the hand. Even though he might be losing out in terms of damage, he is actually winning in terms of advantage overall. He does have 6 hand cards and 3 cards on the field, making him a total advantage of 9 compared to Akuma's 7 total advantage. He does make the opportunity to push in for more damage by sacrificing all his rearguards to destroy the interceptor and push in more damage. This might backfire because you really don't want to push Shadow Paladins. You don't want to push Narukami into 4th damage, but Acolyte is willing to take a chance that he does not have any PG, and if And if he's able to push in 2 points of damage into Akuma, it might be game as well. Especially Akuma's hand, which does not end in PG. But fortunately for him, he will only be able to push him to 3 and hopefully bait out that PG. It might be a plan from Acolyte to push him to 3 and bait out the PG so that he'll be stuck at 3 damage and won't be suffering from the after effects of Limit Break 4. So, Masquerade used 1 point of damage. So, there's a blank. The game is tense. Akuma is actually really scared because he does not have any PG, and this trigger checks will make or break the entire game. Let's see what it goes. It's a heal trigger as oh my god, the heal trigger is crazy. It will basically turn the game because of the fact that Akuma will be taking 2 points of damage, but he'll be recovering 2 extra damage, so which means he will be able to accumulate 2 counter charges for next turn, and he might be able to do another damn charging lines. He gets a draw trigger, but will he be able to draw some resources he needs? He gets interceptor, which is what he needs. Double draw trigger, insane. Will he draw a PG? He really needs a PG to survive, but he does draw into 2 intercepts, which is huge. And also he will be able to do a full clean sweep, which is to use Dragonic Death Side to retire a rear guard, and Dangari to retire another rear guard, and go all in for game. And also with him having Stormy on the field, it really makes up for a really solid formation. He does draw another Dangari, unfortunately, but definitely we will see he will ride the Dangari. Will he show give Dangari the glory it requires? Dangari used to be such an unloved card, but right now Kuma is showing us everything Dangari can do and trying to push for game. So it all comes down to whether Acolyte does have that PG. With all the draw power, it's quite undoubtedly, but you can see Kuma is giving his all in order to push the opponent for game. So right now, this is one of the most intense game because he will be able to do 3 clean sweep of damage thanks to the amount of retiring power he has. So he could lock down and retire, but will he be using Death Side's ability to retire? Most likely, as he will be trying to push for game, will he be using? He does not use. He might be consuming the counter blast for the Dangaris for the next few turns. So it all comes down to whether Dangari, does he play? Oh, I won't be able to check the trigger lineup, but does he play any crit? There's no trigger. Well, does he have PG? Does Acolyte have the PG? Will he check a heal trigger? It's very important. He checks a heal trigger. Oh my god, the heal trigger is huge. It all comes down to whether Acolyte will be able to... What? There's no PG? There's so much draw power, there's no PG? Oh my god! And our champion is... Our first ever Fighters Crossing champion is Akuma! That is insane! Wow! That is crazy! So congratulations to Akuma for winning the first ever Fighters Crossing tournament sponsored by Bushiroad. So it is a really exciting game. I'm glad I was able to see an action-packed game between both fighters. Both fighters, Akuma and Acolyte, did give us a really excellent card fight, both triggering a lot. And Akuma, unfortunately for Acolyte, he did not draw his PG. They were so close, but damn. Amazing work by both fighters.